All right. Okay. Welcome to our Health and Human Services budget meeting for 2023. Let's get right at it. And I believe Carmela is up with mental hygiene.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Actually, the budget director has an overview she would like to present before
Oh, okay.
the hearings start up.
Sure. Sorry, Carmela.
Sorry, Carmela.
5 minutes, I think.
You got it.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple of highlights that we'd like to touch on before everybody starts the review. Just a couple of items to note. The tax levy is equal to the allowable levy per the New York State tax cap calculation. The levy increase is roughly $1.8 million for 2024, and the tentative budget is just below that allowable increase. Okay, so we're under that tax cap, right where we want to be. Property valuation increased roughly 16%, approximately 15.94% is the actual number. The net effect of the levy and the valuation increase is an 89-cent decrease in tax rate to $6.91 per thousand assessed value. For those of you who saw PJ's presentation last week, I'm sure you all, are aware of that factor, and it's a very big deal. Good highlight. Structurally balanced budget. That means no use of general fund balance for recurring events, use of designated fund balance for helicopter debt that's been ongoing, and there is $6.1 million that we're going to be using in general fund balance for capital projects and unusual non-recurring expenses in 2024. The general fund balance is projected to be approximately 13.6% of general fund revenues. Significant investment in capital projects is continuing in 2024. As you'll note in your budget book, you have a list of those projects. FTEs and governmental funds increased by 3.94 FTEs, and those are in the Law Department, HR, and Board of Elections. Base pay includes percentage increases for managers and all of the applicable increases from the union contracts that were recently negotiated that all of you have already approved. So those are in this budget. There won't be any additional changes needed on account of those negotiations. Budget also includes an estimated increase in health insurance and retirement expenses. Final retirement rates were published after the tentative budget was prepared, so we're reviewing budget rates right now to determine any impact on the budget. And the health insurance rates are increased at 1.3%. There is something that we've also plugged into this year's budget. We have assumed a vacancy savings countywide for all departments. It has been applied to all departments that have staff, and the rate that we plugged in was a 5% for everybody. The basis of this over the last few years, between 2020 and 2021, there was an actual 7% savings on account of vacancies. In 2022, we had a 10% savings, and 2023 is trending at that same 10%. So we figured a 5% estimation would be reasonable and definitely conservative considering where the actual numbers, have shown to be. The basis of that is largely, as we all know, the delay in, the typical delay in hiring people and filling positions. It's been a challenge for everybody, so we anticipate that will remain the same for 2024. So hence that vacancy savings is also plugged in countywide. Okay. Inside your binders, really quickly, you have your tentative budget as posted on the internet. You use this section for the following information that is not displayed in other sections of your binder. The operating budget section includes your local share summary that shows all activity for all funds and displays your tax levy, property valuation, and tax rate. The capital budget section includes the status of active capital projects and a list of projects proposed for new or additional funding in 2024. The fiscal status section includes fund balance and debt schedules. And then when it comes to your budget summaries and line item detail, which is all behind the tentative budget information, we go in order by organization number or tab number on your budget schedule. And the budget summary components include your local share summary, your FTE or full-time equivalent position summary. We have the summary by organization at the classification level. This summarizes the individual departments that follow. There may be comments pertaining to the entire organization, depending on which variances and changes are made. There's a summary by department at the classification level with comments. The budget hearings will focus on these exhibits. Budget worksheet by account is behind the budget summary. Revenues for all departments within the organization, followed by expenses for all departments within the organization, are included here. These reports do not show local share by department. So for that, you would want to refer back to the budget summary for that respective department. Your rolling 12-month actual expenditures cover July 2022 through June 2023 versus the 2023 adopted and 24 tentative budgets. These are being finalized and copies will be provided. Expenditures only, no revenues are shown on here. This report compares expenditures in the last 12 months from that July 22 to June 23 timeframe to the 23 adopted budget and the 24 tentative. Financial projections for 2024 to 2028 are provided in your binder in the sleeve on the inside cover. Annual projection of appropriations revenue, tax levy, tax cap, tax rate, and fund balance are on those forms. The recommended format that we have for the budget review hearings, those of you who have done this many times are very familiar with this, but we would like the department head to lead the committee through his or her budget summary first. Then we will refer to the budget by account detail as necessary. It's recommended that the committee vote on any recommended amendments that they wish to send to audit and control, either throughout the hearing or at the end of today's hearing, okay? It is further recommended that to the extent possible, the committee propose amendments to offset any increase to appropriations or decreases in revenue. As a reminder, the tentative budget is just below the tax cap. And lastly, after the tentative budget was prepared, a couple of corrections were identified and new information also became available. So I will identify these items as we proceed through the hearing so you can consider these amendments. Okay. I don't know if anybody has any questions for me or if you want to just take it away.
I just have one question. You said the health insurance rates were increased. Is that reflected in the?
Yes.
Okay.
Marty, I had a question.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Jen, so as far as the fund balance, okay, the 13.6. Okay, so the unobligated fund balance for 2024 is $37,756,685. Okay, that's the numerator. What's the denominator? What's the revenue amount?
It's on the bottom there, you'll see, of the fund balance, fund balance exhibit.
The 278 page?
Yes,
278,402?
yeah,
Okay.
and remember, that's the general fund balance, or general fund revenues and general fund balance, so the A fund only.
Okay, so the 37 over the 278 gives us the 13.6?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd just like to add, it probably won't be in any of the departments today, I don't think, but there was a few exceptions to the vacancy savings that were not applied in some departments that are very small. So, like example, weights and measures, there's only 2 people in the department, but in the legislature's department, we didn't include any vacancy savings because we assumed all of the legislative positions would be filled. So there were a few exceptions, but for the most part, they were included in all department budgets.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Now, we will go with Carmela and social services.
I was on his way down on one side. detail for this department is tab number 31 and 33 for those who are searching for the proper one.
Fiscal Supervisor for the Department of Finance assigned to Social Services and Public Health.
John Anderson, Deputy Commissioner, Social Services. So you can hear me.
Diane Anderson, Director of Temporary Assistance.
A little loud. Sorry about that.
They're awake now.
No worries. Oh. It woke us up.
Me too.
Quickly, before you get started, just in terms of the order of the information in your binders, the tab that I think for the most part it's tab number 31/32. Yeah, but the order of the tabs is a little different.
yeah,
So it might say 31/32 on the tab number, and that's where you'll find the summary, which includes social services and mental hygiene. And then after that would be the line item detail for social services, and then the line item detail for mental hygiene. So, as you know, there was some changes to the org structure.
Now,
So-
in the beginning portion of your budget book, the tentative at the beginning does have the proper tab where 3133 is combined and it's done in order. This is for the line item detail at the back section of your budget book.
All right, good morning. Thank you guys for having us here this morning, and lovely day outside, so enjoy it when you can. So as you can see, in 2023, our local share was 43,382,156. In 2024, tentatively, it'll be 45,566,771, which is a difference of 2,184,615. 5% change. Reason for that is due to the mandated services that we have to take on due from the state, and also changes that have occurred in terms when it comes to FTEs and shares, and also savings as well that we have to occur. One of the reasons we have our staff here is I just took on this position in terms of understanding the monstrosity of what is Department of Social Services on April 29th. So Sam, expert being in finance, John, deputy director, being here. We also have Leanna for children's services. We have Lori Dose, and we also have Diane Anderson, who could speak further into the questions. So I'm here to help support and provide clarity to the best of my ability.
Good morning.
Excuse me, Sam. Yep. I would like to fulfill my commitment to you, Carmela, to ask you one question. That is the number of open positions you currently have and your expectation for being able to fill those throughout the 2024 budget.
Currently, we have 25 open positions that are currently being recruited. We've been discussing a bunch of different options to try and assist with the recruitment issues. Obviously, we do not anticipate these being filled immediately in 2024. We're working on some different recruitment videos, working with mental hygiene on some different ideas to basically, and also with the HR staff, for recruitment ideas, job fairs, et cetera. And as I mentioned, the video to try and assist with recruitment, but this is something that we do anticipate carrying on into 2024.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would also like to add to that is in actively going to the colleges as well, actively just reaching out word of mouth and really creating the brand and changing and I'll share it, and I'll be honest with you guys, and I'm going to be always 100% transparent and be myself. People look at social services and they look at the most vulnerable population that we deal with, and it's like, why would I want to work there? The stress that it is going to incur, the overwhelming, and just being what we call burnout. And that's one of the things that as a team that we have to address is taking care of our staff, taking care of our employees, and really giving them the skills and the tools that they need to be able to handle the most vulnerable population that we deal with day in and day out. So I rather put the right person in the seat of the bus instead of just putting anybody in the seat of the bus, because then that just creates turnover, and then the training and how long that training takes, and then the investment that goes into it. So it's really being strategic with the videos, and also being able to take care of the staff that we do have currently as well, and being able to maximize our potential.
Like child protection, are you talking about? Okay. The stress?
Yes.
Yeah, and also public assistance programs, very stressful as well as frontline staff dealing every day with people in serious, significant crisis.
Well, if we want to go, we can discuss just the regular FTEs for social services. We do have a reduction, speaking just on the social service size, of 6.65. The majority of these, there's some reallocation changes. There's also some positions as the finance restructure begins to take place. Some positions have already moved to finance. Mine would be one of them, the Director of Admin Services. We've also had a senior account clerk that's now part of finance. We have eliminated an account clerk through that process. So it's the restructure and some reallocation changes, which is the driving down at this time, and where we're coming in for the social service side.
Marty?
Yes.
Quick question. Sam, so this reduction of 7.04 overall for the department, are these positions 100% funded, 50% funded, local share? What, do you know
The reduction of the
percentages?
positions under social services, there always is the federal and state share that's reimbursable, so.
50, 75%?
Yep, that is correct. More 75, but with a reduction of those coming down, like my cost would still be under social services, just the FTE is moved.
Just transferred?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Question also.
Absolutely.
In regards to our vacancies and all the positions, obviously I'm assuming we're assuming a 5% savings, as she had stated.
Yes.
But are you concerned with a loss of any revenue associated with not having 25 people? Obviously, you aren't going to be able to get through the work that you need, or you aren't getting the funding for those 25 because they don't exist, and I know there's funding associated. So have you assumed any of that too, you know?
I can help answer that question. So, there definitely, in some instances of vacancies, there's an associated revenue. And as Jennifer mentioned in her opening remarks, that we are trending at about 10% vacancy savings. So rather than asking departments to take out positions, our approach was to add the vacancy savings because we do know it's taking significantly longer to hire positions, 2, 3, 4 months sometimes or longer, when we're actually actively recruiting. So there's a reality that we will experience that. We have experienced 7%, 10% last year, and we're trending a good 10% this year. So rather than add 10% vacancy savings for next year and then revenue offsets, basically we went with 5% to call it a day. So that was the rationale behind using only 5% vacancy savings rather than 10% and reducing revenues. In some instances, it was kind of a timing issue when we are finalizing the budget, but we do recognize that this is going to be a tighter budget for that reason, and we had a department head meeting and communicated that we will be monitoring all budgets closely for where we're trending in terms of vacancies and revenues, et cetera.
If any department, this department would be associated more with the revenue loss than
Correct.
others with vacancies.
Yes, that's true. Some have that aspect and some don't.
Marty,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
With 25 vacancies, obviously, it creates a lot of, recruitment expense as well as training expense. Do you feel that those expenses are built into this budget?
Yes, no, they are in there, recruitment, and some different options through Social Services Administration. There's always training that's also ongoing through our department.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
All right, well, if we want to start going down by organizational start, the first one would be DSS administration, which is A6010. This has a reduction. It's showing quite a substantial, like a $1.4 million reduction. Of that, about 1 million of that is the vacancy savings, as they were just discussing. It's 822,000 in personal services, and then there is obviously a benefit portion of that. We had some reductions based on just where the contractual activity has been to date through social services administration only. That has kind of remained slower than the upticks we're seeing across the rest of the department. So we are coming in under, obviously, initially as the budget was presented prior to the vacancy savings, there was not as substantial, so it was only about a $390,000 reduction at that point.
Sam, I have a question. On your budget summary, you have the comment on your New York State aid and federal aid, which are both going up, that it is offset by decreased expenses.
It should be, that's a mistype. So
Okay, it should be increased expenses.
Increased, yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
All right, so the next set is organizational set A6055, which is daycare. This is actually childcare. I know it was very confusing for me coming over, daycare, childcare. The number one thing is my projection is wrong on this. We are over budget at this time. We are going to go over, and there's a resolution being pre-filed using some additional block grant and rollover funding that's available in the amount of $1.7 million for October. So we've seen an increase in here. We did have, going into this program year, which began on October 1st of last year, $11 million in funding for childcare. That's through the childcare block grant rollover funds and still some COVID funding that was available. So we're finishing through the ceiling report last Friday at almost $6 million left in funding available. So just bringing that to your attention, there is a resolution coming in October. It is no local share on this because we do have the funding available. But the expenses are trending higher, as my note says. They're just trending higher than I anticipated back when I switched over in July through the budget process.
Questions on that? Okay.
So the next is A6070. This is service for recipients. This is like the non-TA domestic violence costs. We did go over this year. In looking, that looks like to be a 1 year kind of trend. This is not something that traditionally has gone over budget. There is a revenue compartment through the Title 20 funding, but this is a pretty standard account for us, but this year is kind of an anomaly where we went over budget and amended it already this month.
Questions?
So next would be A6109. This is family assistance. Coming in, looking where we finished last year, we finished over. Looking where we're at through the years, in my limited experience, obviously coming in July, I wasn't comfortable reducing this. We still have about $2 million left through the end of this year in this account, but we're keeping it basically the same or flat as last year, just based on where I saw the numbers for this account in July and beginning of August. That made sense to me at that time. But we are something we're keeping our eye on as we get further along, as the case numbers are kind of increasing across the board.
Any questions on that? Ms. Fowler?
Are the revenues staying flat too for that? I mean, is the state percentages going up in what they're paying at all?
No.
So they're keeping it flat also?
It's a percentage that they pay on these cases.
Yeah.
And the percentages stay the same.
And it's just state to state.
Yeah.
You know what it is for this?
What is, is
Roughly.
it 50?
Yeah, I think it's
Assistant?
50.
50%, yeah.
The rest is
Is that a year?
local share.
There's a federal share as well.
Yep.
What is that federal share, Sam?
It's, I don't have it off the top. It's significant, because the federal share of the $6.2 million budget is $5 million, so it's a significant
That's a
federal
big
portion.
amount, big amount.
Yeah. But the percentage isn't changing, so the caseloads would be increasing, as Sam said.
Correct, yeah.
Which we are, there is a slight increase, or it remained flat, but basically, we're anticipating everything kind of remaining the same, but keeping an eye on it into next year.
It automatically increases for them, right, if the whole total cost goes
Yep.
up. They're still paying 50% of the
Yep, that's
Yeah.
correct.
total cost, so it goes up, and their revenues will go up, or revenues go up because their costs go up, so. Okay. It's not capped at a certain amount, at least it's
No.
a percentage, which is good. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
So next would be A 6119. This is childcare, but this is really foster institutionalized care. This is going up. We've had a rate increase that was mandated, that was not anything we had control over, so we have increased the revenue based on the increased rates. And the effect of the rates increase should be fully felt in 2024, but that was budgeted into 23. The final rate increase was in August. That has happened, so now we're just going into where we're currently at.
Any questions on this?
Yeah, why are there fewer children going into foster care then? And it says in the comments.
I don't think it, does it say that?
That was the kind of notes I had going into the budget. We had less, but the rates were increased.
And if there are less,
But it's
that
not a
much.
significant decrease in cases.
So in 2021, we had 87, we have 89 in 2022, and I don't have the number currently for 2023, but I'm assuming it's in the 80 range. But it is, as Sam said, that we were starting, I think there have been 3 different segments that we were required to increase the rates to the maximum state aid level.
Yep, that is correct.
And I think the last one, as Sam said, was in August. So we're now at that point where we've had 2 increases, making us at that maximum rate that we weren't paying before for foster care. And now we're at that level where we're required to do that. So that's the main increase in dollars.
'Cause I know I see advertisements looking for
Recruiting,
foster parents,
yes,
yeah.
always. We're adopting more children, though, I will say that, that's a big deal. There are more
That
kids
is
being
good.
adopted. There are more adoption subsidies that come out of this as a result. So some of the increase could be increased adoption subsidies. I'm not gonna say it's a huge number increase, but those subsidies are significant, ongoing, and so that's where you'd see increases here.
And does this include residential, the children who are put into residential care? Is it institutional? I don't know if that's the same.
Yes,
thing.
it does. It doesn't include kids, and I think it's in state training on this, that's OCFS custody. So these are all kids that are in the custody of the Commissioner of Social Services, not the custody of the State Commissioner of Child Welfare, Social Services, yeah, Office of Child and Family Services.
We
Did I
don't
say that
have
right?
any local, do we?
Local kids?
Residential homes for the kids?
No, we do not.
So most of them I know are in Buffalo area, Rochester,
Randolph.
Randolph, okay. And do we have an increase in those?
No.
No. Okay.
No, there's not been an increase.
Any other questions? Okay.
Well, next is organizational set A 6123. This is juvenile delinquent care detention. This is an interesting account in that we've not actually been invoiced from the state in a number of years. The prior year expense is actually accruals that we've been booking based on, eventually we are going to get a bill in the mail, but it's been several years. So basically we have a 50,000. This is for the worst case scenario of kids in this program. And then we've been booking accruals based on the expectation of costs, but that goes back a number of years. That was done last year, obviously, before I came on board.
Right.
What's the number of years?
It was pre-2020. I mean, we've not received invoice or actually had rates since 2020, for at least or earlier, but 2020 is the date I found.
And we've had we've had kids in the program.
Yes, but not a significant number, but yes. One? One.
From 2016 to now, sorry, yeah. I mean, we've gone down significantly, but what Sam said is they're starting to bill us for 2016, 2017, when we had pretty much 18 kids in an OCFS facility. I mean, now we have one, which is partially paid for through Raise the Age.
Keep good records to go back that far.
Okay.
Yep, so the next account is A6123.RTA. That is Raise the Age, as Leanna was just mentioning. This is 100% costs are 100% funded for any expenses in this program. Actually, Leanna would be a better person probably to talk about Raise the Age than I would. So.
I mean, those are the kids that meet that criteria. You want me to go on?
Sure.
Yeah, there's an extra chair on each side, so if you want to pull it up, you can go ahead and use it.
She can sit
I should
right.
go this way.
Oh, she'll go that way.
And if you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Leanna Luca Conley, Deputy Commissioner of Adult, Children, and Family Services side. So as far as with Raise the Age, it's 100% reimbursed as long as we don't go over the cap rate. So that's why we want to stay under that. Probation mainly uses Raise the Age for a lot of their services. We have it contracted on our side mainly for preventive, or if we do get those kids that fall over on the Raise the Age side with social services. I mean, we have a minimal number on social services side compared to probation.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in the cap rate was what? You mentioned the cap rate.
As long as we stay under the cap rate, which I know Jen had just said that we're not over that as far as the taxes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
the county
Yes.
Yeah, the
tax
county.
cap rate.
Yeah, if we
Okay.
go over that, they're not gonna reimburse us 100%. So
Okay.
that's kind of the incentive for us to stay under.
Okay, I wasn't sure you were referring to the county tax cap rate.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else? Thank you.
All right, so next would be account A6129. This is state training schools. This is the OCFS facilities. Again, we've increased this. There are expenses that we do know are coming. Again, last year's amount of the 658, this is all accrued expenses. This is similar where we know we have expenses going back to 2016 and on that are going to be coming. We've been accruing. We're budgeting in preparation, and in case we also have children in the program or have funds. But this is really, there's no good idea of when we're actually going to receive invoices for this, unfortunately.
Right. Or rates.
Right.
Mhm.
Or the rates.
You have no idea?
It's a calculation the state does based on how many youth they have across the state in care, and then they spread that out according to who had the kids, and then we get the rate. So whatever their cost is, they spread it out based on the number of beds filled.
So if they have less kids in care in OCFS facilities and we have a child there, our rate is higher.
Yes.
It's to basically cover their expenses.
Yeah.
Because we have a higher percentage, because, okay. Absolutely.
Let's say we don't get the bills and we have the money, what do we do with it then? And in past budgets, was there money set aside for this, and what do we do with it?
Well, in like last year's budget, the budget was there, and then they accrued the anticipated expense, so, and that would be what we should continue. Eventually, we are gonna receive invoices for this, or the charges for this at some point. It's just, we don't have a good date. It could be tomorrow, it could be a year from today, or 2 years from today.
Do you know what those accrued amounts are?
Last year's was 658,000. I could look in further to see what was done in prior years, but I think last year was the first year they began doing this. But I can look and get back to you on that.
I just was curious how much we actually have and how much we're actually anticipating to get billed eventually too, you know, just so we know we're on the right pace and track, I guess. You never, you know, sounds like quite a few kids years ago and we're trending more positively, but
Mhm.
the state's good at giving you a big bill all of a sudden and want it right away too, so.
That's the truth.
Okay.
Well, up next is account A 6140. This is safety net. We are increasing the budget for next year. Unfortunately, this year, the one thing that we have seen over the last 2 months, which is the months of August and September, is we've seen about $1.8 million worth of expenses go through safety net. We've gone over budget. We are significantly going to go over budget this year. So there'll be a resolution coming for October to balance that account, but just to make everyone aware, we're looking about a $2 million overage in safety net. Basically, the case numbers have increased, and a lot of this looks like we're heading towards, not heading towards, but it looks more like we're at pre-pandemic levels of expenses than what we've been since like basically the last 3.5 years.
Marty?
Yes.
Quick question. Sam, any reason why this tremendous increase is occurring?
Well, I mean, it's the drivers of the case. I mean, I know we've been talking is at the end of the pandemic funding and how people are entering the assistance again at this time. But the case numbers are headed up. They have been in the last 2 months, really, since this was presented. We've had 1.8 through safety net.
So we're potentially looking at a $2 million shortfall?
This year, yes.
Thanks.
So Sam, what does that say about your 2024 tentative budget?
It looked a lot better before I saw the charges that were posted in August and September. I mean, it's a
Yes, it
risk going
did.
in with this. It's minimal reimbursement of like 29–30%, so it's.
Safety net is low.
So given where pre-pandemic numbers, this was around an $8 million budget, 8 to 9. Increasing it up $500,000 to 6. I mean, and depending where we finish this year, that's the one piece is I've seen it really drive up over the last 2 months. We had a couple months earlier this year in the high 700,000s in a month. But without the data of knowing, is this going to continue through the end of this year into next year? That in my limited experience and kind of seeing this stuff ramping up, whether or not that's going to be the case or not.
John, you have any predictions on this?
I would say that we will probably be looking at pre-pandemic levels, like Sam mentioned. We're already getting to that point.
What are the drivers for that?
Sam mentioned this too. A lot of it has to do with the end of the pandemic relief. People were getting extra funding for food.
Yeah.
They were not being evicted. They were getting tax credits. There was a lot of money being thrown out there to people, and we saw our caseloads go down significantly for those 2 years. The caseload in 2021 was 1,436. That includes safety net and temporary assistance, family assistance. So the overall caseload was 1,436. In 2022, it ticked up to 1,617, and now we're at 1,767, about 300 more. So that's a significant increase, and it's again moving toward that pre-pandemic level. And it's economic drivers in the community. It has to do with the money that was flowing out there through the pandemic relief. That's our best understanding of what's happening here.
Can you refresh my memory then, when they were getting all the extra assistance during pandemic funding, did this go down? Was our budget lower?
Yes, several $1 million, yes.
So this is looking to go back to what it was?
Around that rate. That's
Obvious question, I'm sorry, but I just want to be clear.
Yes, definitely. And that's kind of what Sam is suggesting, is that's the direction we're heading, is back to what it might have been prior. Yeah.
So what do we do about that?
Well, I mean, at least that's the last couple of months, that's the driver. Obviously, I don't have years of experience, and looking back on it, I just don't have a good number to say it's gonna be 8 million next year, it could be 6 million. We're kind of seeing the cases drive now, so it is a risk leaving it where it is.
Right.
Marty?
Yes.
John, I have two questions for
Oh,
you.
sure.
The 1767 that you referenced for 2023, is that a
Yes.
year-to-date number or a
That's
prorated?
the current caseload as of August, end of
And-
August.
Okay.
And
So
Diane, go
I
ahead.
think it'll be higher then. It'll have to be.
It'll likely go higher, yes.
Do we know what like the 2018, 2019 caseloads were?
I don't have that in front of me right here, no.
Okay.
We can get that if you'd like that.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Do we know the 18 and 19 budget numbers?
Well, he's typing them. One way to help maybe this is promote ways to help people get off of the system,
Yeah.
right? And we're probably actively trying to do that. Obviously having 25 less employees, there's areas that maybe are not as covered as well. This might be one of them.
This is one of them.
So, finding those 25 people is critical, and it may help get some people off of this and help lower that number too.
Absolutely.
So that's certainly one way, Elizabeth, you were kind of alluding to, well, what can we do? Well, one is hire some people to help
Mhm.
promote ways to get people off of this system. And
Yeah.
what programs are you doing to do that now, and that's.
I think Carmela mentioned a few of them. We do work very closely with HR. One of the challenges is having people take the examination. So reaching out with HR when they go to job fairs and sharing information about us. I think a big thing that we're hoping will make a big difference is Justin Gould, who you probably know. He does a lot of media, but he also does production. So we're trying to do a very well-done production, video production, that demonstrates, starting in DSS, and I know we're moving into mental hygiene and then some of the other county areas, but starting with social services, demonstrating the things that you can do working for the county in social services and the difference that you can make. We'll have employees be part of this, showcasing some of the places that you might work or people you might see when you come. So we're excited about that piece. He's working closely with a woman named Deb Maggio, who is in the mental hygiene department. She's a great production person as well, and also with HR. So we're thinking that'll be useful. I think it's out of the box thinking, and we're hoping that it works. It'll be a longer-term strategy to move that video production into an orientation package for new employees so that they feel a part of what we're doing in the county.
And that's underway now.
Yes, we're starting that process. They've started storyboarding it. We've had several meetings. We're getting to that point where they'll start interviews with staff and video of employees. We have, mentioning what you mentioned, we have 8 vacancies in one of the key areas in Jamestown that manages this population, and that's about a 20%. So in certain areas, it's more of a hit than other areas, and this is one of those areas right now where there are challenges. So we really need to get people in the door.
Well, those directly affect that one employee of a value of 70, 80,000 could save you that much.
Absolutely, yeah.
Could save you $1 million and get people off of
Yeah.
the program, which is huge.
Mr. Chairman. John, I think the examination fee is like $25 or
Yeah.
whatever. If the county could somehow waive that examination fee, do you think that would encourage more people to take your exams?
I think it might for some people. Some of
Okay.
the folks that do take our examinations don't have a lot of income already. They might not have, a college education and they're younger set. They probably have kids. So I think every penny makes a difference, and it could.
I'm not sure we could target it just to the people that might take the exam to qualify for a safety net employee or coordinator or whatever. But if we could, Maybe we could look into having the legal department check this out, and
Sure.
if you think that could help you. that's
I don't think it would
something we
hurt,
could-
and I think it's a good suggestion.
Okay.
I do know that there's a waiver already in place with HR for individuals that fall below a certain income level.
I think there is, but I'm thinking just in general
Yeah.
for people. I mean, $25 isn't a lot, but for some people to kind of gamble that they may or may not make the list,
Right.
it might make a difference. Just a thought.
It could. Thank you.
I think another piece is also that I have discovered as I've gone around and spoken to a lot of potential employees is that I think us, and I say us as a whole, as a team, as the department heads and as departments, we don't do a good job of really selling what the county has to offer in terms of your 35 hours, your retirement, and CEUs and stuff like that when it comes to mental hygiene. I mean, Trish says it all the time, and I can sit here and I can say Trish has been instrumental in getting us nurses, even in the jail, which at one point last year we thought would be impossible, and with her help and the team over there, they've been able to pull it off. So I think it's also how we sell it as well. I think the other piece, which is important for us to have these vacancies filled, is something called pathways, where we can sit down as a treatment team and really sit down with the individual and find what are the gaps. How can we help them get back to work? Are we able to get them stable, or are we able to restore? Because there's a difference there, and really help them out with what they need. And there's things that we got to fix internally, and I'll be 100% honest about that. And once we tweak those things and we get those running, then we can start focusing on those other programs to really help, which I agree with you, it will mitigate a lot of these expenses. But most importantly, it'll get them to a place where they'll be empowered and they'll be self-sufficient and sustainable.
In the numbers for safety net, 2019, the expense was 6.4 million. 2018, it was 7.5, and 2017, it was 7.8.
Mr. Chairman, and I just add on to that, the 2018 and 2019 adopted budgets for the local share were 4.8 million and 4.7 million. So about $1 million higher than this proposed budget.
That's exciting that you're using Justin Gold for video.
Using a lot.
Sounds like department
We
heads
are
could
using
watch that
him quite a
video
bit.
first and foremost.
Yeah.
That's good. Any other questions? Okay.
So the next sheet is A6141, which was the Home Energy Assistance Program HEAP. That is just reference for last year's budget. And the 2022 actuals, all of this is now recorded in a 6010 administration, and it's just done it through a project sub-project. So that change was made earlier this year, I think in February or March. So this is all just now recorded in admin, and this was just here for your reference.
Any questions?
And then we get into A6142. This is emergency aid for adults. This is also something that has already gone over budget this year that we amended this past month. We were increasing it. This budget number had been decreased going into '23, so it is being increased based on what we saw over the summer and the fact that we had gone over budget already. It's 50% state revenue on this.
Does this include the housing like at the hotels?
What this is supplement, it's for people who have SSI recipients who face emergency situations. It could, but it's very limited.
Is that something different? The homeless, the people that end up like at the hotel in Faulkner?
That
which
would
is-
end up being under safety net and family assistance.
No,
program.
it is under
Oh, it
this
is, because this is
also.
only
Yes.
$59,000.
We are definitely seeing an increase of people who get SSI and
Oh, yeah.
qualify for assistance only because the costs of the hotel are much higher than an apartment would be.
But the primary
So it does
place where
include
that fund, where those expenses show up is in those other two areas.
Those are
But
the
this
other.
population of SSI recipients who are disabled individuals, when they run an emergency that's a housing emergency, it would show up here for sure. Yes.
Okay. That didn't seem high enough, so that's why, because it's
That
the
is
other
right.
one.
Mhm.
And part of that reason is same as safety net,
Mhm.
pandemic relief going away and
Yes.
inflationary pressures. And
People's eviction moratorium lifted, yeah, all of that kind of stuff. Rents being higher.
underlying theme. Yes.
Yeah.
Overlying.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
All right, next would be A7310. This is the Youth Bureau, Youth Programs. We budgeted this to be consistent. We are going to, either next month or in the following month, there is some additional revenue that's gonna be coming to the Youth Bureau, so that's gonna be done via resolution shortly. But going into this, I don't have finalized numbers on that, but it's not gonna be an increase to the local share, it just might be an increase to the revenue and expense.
Any questions? Okay.
And the next account is A6100. This is the Medicaid weekly shares, and this is one of the items I believe that we need to amend at this point. We received a letter, basically September 4th. We had received a letter in the summer giving us the weekly rates and projected savings that the county would have. That came in before I came on board. We received a letter September 14th. So number one, the $1 million forecasted savings for 2023, we no longer have. That actually was my intention to use that for safety net. The other portion is we were given a couple options based on, through the state, an option 1A, depending on the clawback of the FMAP. So either option presented was an increase to the 2024 budget. So I believe we've already submitted the paperwork, so I don't know if we just want to propose amending the budget based on those options, or?
Yes, that's actually one of the items in our list to have the budget amended for that amount. And the total increase would be $643,729.
And just to add on to that, there's several other amendments that would potentially help offset that expenditure that are applicable to other committees, but we can go through those with you at the end of today's hearing if you like, just so you know that those would be anticipated amendments in other committee meetings.
What was the total again, Jen? I'm sorry. What's the total you just said?
$643,729.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But we can offset that in other committees.
Yes.
Proposed.
So far, yes, we can.
But that doesn't take into consideration, I don't think, that their comments regarding safety net.
It does not.
Correct.
So if there's a consideration to increase the safety net budget, we would have to find a further offset to that. And I don't know what you're recommending the increase to safety net be, but if you have a dollar amount that you.
I mean, it's budgeted at 6 million. 2019, the last pre-pandemic year, was 6.4. So as I said, I don't have a good basis to, it could come in at 6 million, 5.5, or it could be 8. I guess I would rely, I'm assuming the case numbers, we're not gonna see them go down. We're probably just gonna see them considered to go up at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We can watch them closely, but
Well,
it's who comes in the door.
Are we conservative enough in other areas of anticipating our revenues to cover this as we go through the year too? It kind of depends if it's 500,000, kind of depends if it's 1.5 million. So, you know, could extra sales tax revenue cover it? Maybe that, that could go over, maybe not. So it's a gamble.
Yeah.
Vacancies. Hopefully we fill those vacancies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, So I guess we need a motion to amend A 6100
So moved?
to the 643, 729?
Yes, I'd like to propose then that we amend it to the 643, 729. Is that the?
Increase.
Increase. I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, any other questions on this? All right,
And the last account is A 6101, medical assistance. This also is remaining flat. There is a note that is 100% reimbursed. The balance of that revenue does appear in mental hygiene, not social services.
okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Move on. Or do you want to take a break for 15 minutes? It's in the schedule, or? do you want to continue?
Marty, do we have time for questions on line items for
Yeah.
mental health? Okay,
Yes,
I've got one question, and this might be for you, John. In our budget books, it's on page 5 of 13. This would be on-call. There seems to be quite an increase in this budget.
This is the
It's
on-call for the two
on-
people.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's, I can
yes.
give you the account number, it's, A610, 1403.
Right, so
On-call.
this would be in anticipation of a change in the federal laws that will affect New York State for adult protective services. Adult protective services right now does not have any after-hour staffing. So this is in anticipation of a federal legislative change that will impact the state. So we would have to staff 24/7.
Okay, because this is a tremendous increase in this budget. It's almost 300%. We were 19,000 in 2021, 18,000 in 2022, and now we're budgeted next year for 74,750.
Right.
Okay, and you think this is a pretty good projection based on this new law?
Are you still hearing this is the direction that they're going?
Yes, we're just waiting for the federal regulations to come out. The federal government has, I'm Carmen Polsta, and I'm the Medicaid director as well as I oversee adult protection. The federal government, with adult protection, it's never been, it's always voluntary for them to accept our services or not accept our services. And we've only just done it between 8:30 and 4:30 Monday through Friday. And the federal government says with all the adult abuse that's going on and the federal, and the financial abuse and the physical abuse that they're facing, they feel that the program needs to change more like child protection where they're responsible 24/7. And, so, and Carmelo is the commissioner for, the Guardian for several, I think it's 21 individuals right now.
Yes.
In adult protection, and we have seen an increase. Just this week, we got 2 more, court hearings to, look at guardianship for 2 more individuals. So the federal government says, and responsible 24/7 if somebody called. Like right now, what happens is the police will get a call, the sheriff will get a call, and he'll call whoever's on call for child protection, and then they have to call the supervisors for adult protection because they don't. Adult protection is totally different than child protection in the work we do, and what the laws are for adults versus what the laws are for children. Because right now, if there's a problem with a child, you can remove the child. With adults, you can't remove them. They have to be allowed to make bad decisions, even if it's gonna harm them, as long as they understand that that's the way it could be.
Okay, Carm, I was aware that child protection does have the 24-hour service.
Yeah.
So you're saying that with the adult protection, this is two different programs? You can't utilize the people from child protection to take the calls and then notify somebody in adult protection? Is that more or less it?
Even if you notified somebody in adult protection, you would have to have that adult protection worker go out because the child protection workers are so busy, they don't have time
Okay.
to take care of the adult cases. So we would have to actually hire or pay whoever our staff is. We would actually have to hire more staff, but we would also have to have them cover on call like the child.
It would be the on-call cost. So they would be on call and they would have to go out. It would work similar to Child Protective Services, and that's what Sam did, is he projected it based on.
And it's two different programs, John?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
so
and
you
there's-
can't intermingle?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's basically adjusting the staffing patterns to look more like child protection, once the regulation goes through.
Right.
Okay. And this is
She
your
did
best
say-
estimate on this,
Yes.
this new program?
Carmen mentioned that we're waiting to hear about federal funding that might come along with this, so that could offset it in some way, but we do not know and have not heard exactly what that might be. So this is a conservative approach to say that this is what it could be.
So this is just the appropriations part at this time?
Yes.
And from my experience in the federal government, now that they're dealing with their budget situations, I'm assuming once that's rectified, we'll get the regulation along with the funding source that they're gonna allow us.
I hope so.
Me too. Please.
To follow up on Terry's question, I was wondering along the same lines if there was any kind of overlap that could happen with other staffing. Shifting somebody to say from a day shift to being on call at night. But I'm assuming that because of your staffing levels already, you probably couldn't afford to have a day person shift to night so that there'd be some balance and
Sure.
canceling out of the costs.
The way that this would work is that there would be an after-hours on-call rate that a person would get paid, and they would only be paid if they had to go out and do a visit.
Okay.
So rather than staffing it full-time, we'd be staffing it with on-call staff, and they would then go out on a visit and be paid for those hours. So that it would be minimizing the amount. You wouldn't necessarily have to have people 24/7 that were actually being paid hour by hour.
Okay. Makes sense, yeah.
Do you know if this is an issue that's trending upwards?
What we're seeing in adult protective services?
Yeah.
I think we do see a trend in upwards, but the numbers of cases aren't to the volume and the degree as they might be in other areas. But certainly, I think they're doing a good thing here with giving further assistance to adult population. It is a sore spot for everybody that there isn't a means to, or we aren't even legally required to go out after hours or to remove somebody. So more support for the public keeps people in their homes longer. And it means that they won't be hospitalized if there's a mental health issue or there's other issues happening there with abuse. So it's a good thing. It's just not something that they've required up to date.
It's preventive and saves on overall costs.
Yes. That's the hope.
That's the hope. So it's
Yeah.
kind of wait and see right now.
Yeah.
What are they gonna subsidize? How much? We don't know what we're gonna spend.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
It'd probably get utilized too.
Oh, yeah.
Agencies will call, like police,
Yes.
fire, right? They're the ones that are gonna call you and say, you come to this area. So once it's in place, the phone's gonna ring and people are gonna be sent out.
Right, yeah.
A lot of times, it's as Carmen said, the sheriff's department will find somebody that's in dire straits, based on a call they receive. They'll be at the scene, And this will offer the opportunity for us to go out with the legal means that they have, if they do have legal means, to intervene where possible and provide support.
That's great.
Terry, do you have any more?
No, that's it, thanks.
Okay. All right. We can go to a 15-minute break, or we can continue on it. What's the pleasure of the break?
Wait, I just wanted to, for clarification, was the break just and then do mental hygiene afterward?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the schedule says, but
Yep.
I'm
No.
good either way.
But I just wanted to mention for the committee, I just wanted to commend Sam
Yes.
Zafuto. He's been doing double duty as he
has.
transitioned
Triple.
from, DPF, has really done a commendable job coming up to speed on, 2 other big department budgets, social services and then public health later. So I just wanted to recognize Sam.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sam.
And then really
Our
quickly.
Thanks, Sam.
Oh.
No extra money, but our thanks.
Lots of thanks.
Well, I was gonna say, he's saving us the money right there, in one position alone.
There you go.
And then really quickly, just before everybody takes a break, hopefully he won't be mad at me for this, but today is the county executive's birthday. He is currently in a meeting in room 331 that should be concluding soon, and I believe there's breakfast pizza. So if you have an opportunity and if you see him, wish him a happy birthday today.
He's buying.
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody did.
All right. Okay, so it is
Think I'm ready.
10:10. Or 10:30. Where's my pen?
I'm not done with my going yet.
Oh, okay. We'll wait for Mr. Scudder to get done with his cruelly there.
What?
All right. We are now at mental hygiene. If you all could introduce or reintroduce yourself.
Hernandez, Director of Mental Hygiene.
Oh.
Wow. And I'm Trish McLennan, Deputy Director for Mental Hygiene.
And I'm Paul Myers, and I'm the Fiscal Supervisor for Mental Hygiene. And I've been here before. My first time, I'd been on the job for 3 days.
Well, welcome.
We have a lot of questions.
Okay.
So real quickly, one of the things I do want to point out, it has to do with just overall, just the state of the county itself and departments. Most definitely for the social services, but I would say across the board. And this came from a Wall Street Journal. 66% of high school grads are not going to college, and that was in 2022. The reasons they found were high cost of education, return on investment, and the blue collar jobs, what they were able to make, and just really forego and start their own businesses. Now, I'm not using that as an excuse. It's just something that we have to be aware of, especially when hiring individuals, and the qualifications are either associate's degree in human services, bachelor's degree, social workers, psychiatrists, licensed mental health counselors. So it is a challenge, but this is across the state, across the U.S., not just the state. So it's just something to be mindful of. It makes it that little bit more challenging, but I believe, I know myself and I know our team is up for the challenge. So just the fact that, as I was also mentioned earlier, Trish is able to staff the jail with nurses who, were at one point extinct in the jail. So that's something that we're up for the challenge, and we have to climb the mountain.
Okay.
So with that being said, local share for 2023 for us was 336,289. 2024 tentative 82,654. Here is a negative 253,635. 75.4% change variance. With that being said, I will say this. It's the 730s. The 730s is one of the things that bite us in the rear end in mental hygiene, due to the fact that we have to take on 100% of the cost. Now, we are getting creative, and we are taking on and coming in as a team. One of the things that we're looking at is the Jackson petition, which what that means is pretty much when you're at the state hospital, their employees are going to get paid regardless, whether they fill one bed or whether they fill all the beds. So what a Jackson petition does, as I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between stabilizing an individual and restoring. So when individuals go up there, we want to make sure that are we stabilizing or restoring? Restoring to be able to stand trial, or just stabilizing them on their meds? Because what we want to do as mental hygiene is, we can stabilize them here in the county. We don't have to send them up to a state hospital to stabilize them. And that's something that we're going to work with the judges, with the sheriff, because hits all of us. So what a Jackson petition does, if an individual is up there, let's say past 90 days, we file the Jackson petition and we say, hey, have you restored this individual? Because that's what we send them up there. If you're just stabilizing and holding on to it, what the Jackson petition does is it gives the bill right back to the state. Now, I'm not trying to throw the state under the bus, but if they're going to, we have to play together in this, and that's what the Jackson petition would allow us to do. So I have a meeting with our mental hygiene legal, so we can become professionals at the Jackson petition and how we can, utilize it to our advantage. Because at one piece for me, and yes, it has a dollar sign to it, which I'm completely open to it and understand it, but it's really, are we just having people, putting them up there for 8-9 months for them to come back just on medication and then still go back into cycle, just repeat itself? We want to prevent the cycle, and we want to get proactive about it. So enough Jackson petitions go up from DCSs like myself, I think the state will have a different tune and sit at the table and have a more meaningful conversation with us when it comes to the 730s.
And you can only do the Jackson petition after 90 days?
What I was told from the conference, from their legal team, they said good practice is 90 days because it gives them some time to get there. They get their 30 days, they start the treatment, they get it back on medication. By 90 days, we should be having some conversation in the sense of, okay, is this person stable or restored? And the conversation becomes meaningful. Good part about it is we get the bill on the back end. So they don't bill us until they're about to release the person. So the sooner we get the Jackson petition up there, now we start the conversations a lot sooner.
Any questions more on that? Okay.
All right, we have, and I know it's always an issue about the change in personnel. We currently have 18 vacancies projected in the 2024 budget. I think it's exactly the same as the 2023 budget was. And what occurred is that the programs that were planned for implementation during 2023 have not actually fallen into place quite yet. Tricia's got a hierarchy of who's going to go where and how those programs are going to get started. So I think that implementation is going to occur in 2024. So we left everything the way that it was from the prior year. And we can detail that some more. We have no changes in FTEs, as you can see on the FTE count page. We're divided into three operational categories. Our administration is this next page that you'll arrive at. That's the people in Mayville here, Carlos, Carmelo, and Trish, and myself, and the operating staff. We're running really close on. I'm sorry. The first page is the combined. I wanted to skip ahead to the administration page, which is where it starts at the top, A4310. Okay, all right. We have just a minor amount of change, and those seem to be because we had a little bit of movement in the upper staff. Carmela's now sharing time over at DSS, begrudgingly, because we like him a lot. And the funding has changed a little bit. We had money coming in from COVID in previous years that we're not going to have in 2024. So we expected a decline there. So we're going to up a little bit on local share at that level, but it's simply a payroll issue. For the next page, A4320, these are our operations, and this is the meat of the programs. We have increased cost, once again, primarily driven by wages, salaries, increases in that. To try and offset that, we've looked at different purchases that we're making, equipment, supplies, all the mundane things that we can do, but we don't have a choice. Almost all of that is payroll related. Because of that, we've got a little bit of an increase in our contractual because we're going, some of the services that are being requested are not able to be provided under county job descriptions. So we're required to use outside vendors to provide those. On the revenue side, we've got hopes of increased revenue during 2024, most of which comes from the state is now giving us money up front to initiate programs and then allowing subsequent funding to be able to maintain those programs. So during the last year, we got a couple of startups, and all the money comes up front, so it's a wonderful thing, and I think that that's going to continue for child programs and transitional programs and mobile crisis sort of things. So I think we're going to get some more, a bulk of money during 2024 for those programs, and then allow that continuing support over the next years.
Will those, initiating those programs, will those require FTEs
Yes.
additional?
Some of these are like school counselors, and I know I've come here before to talk about, change resolutions for school counselors. We've had several $25,000 grants to help get into the schools. So for example, Rachel Ludwig, who's back there, who does a lot of child and school work, we're going to be talking with Faulkner School this week. We're going to be talking with Sherman Panama Climber this week. We've Southwest, we're at several different schools, so it takes an FTE to do that. But then in the school, the difference between the school hiring the therapist and us going in, if a school hires a therapist on their own, that's not billable, so they need a sustainable plan. Now, COVID dollars did help them for a while, so you heard about a lot of schools hiring a lot of social workers for a while. Those fundings are running out right now for the schools. For us, because they're truly under our clinic, these are billable services just like they are in our clinic. So we would be in there, we set it up, we work with the schools, they become part of their team, but they're our staff, and then we can bill for that. And that is very sustainable. So the $25,000 is like a startup fund, because it does take a little bit of time. There's hiring costs, there's startup costs to build a caseload. Those kinds of things do take a while. But that definitely takes care of itself. And then the other nice thing that we just learned within the last month is that the reimbursement rates for school-based mental health counseling is increasing. And on top of that, Office Mental Health is really preferring, which I'm thrilled about, really preferring that we do more off-site treatment. In other words, we provide the treatment where the person wants it, where they're most comfortable. So when you're talking students, that's truly where most of them want. You know, can you imagine if you're a parent who's already struggling, lives in Sherman, trying to get down to one of our Jamestown or Dunkirk clinics? Now imagine if we say, we can see your kid right at school, and we do that. So that's a great example of some of that funding, and we just are applying for a couple more schools. So we meet with the schools, we find out their needs, and if this is something they want and they need, we're going to help them out. And that's true for every district in our county.
How does the reimbursement work? Do the schools apply for it, or do you
No,
manage that?
no, we do, we bill for it. So just like I would in the clinic. So if you were to see a counselor in the clinic, we bill the insurance. So same in the school. They are registered under Chautauqua County Department of Mental Hygiene as a client, that student is, and then we just bill the insurance with the parent consent, of course. But that's how that works. So it's considered an off-site location for us. So different schools, like Dunkirk, we're very active in Dunkirk School. And so we have an off-site location at Dunkirk. And those principals, superintendents really want us involved there. The other neat thing, just to kind of hit, I was listening to some of the conversation about recruitment and workforce and social services. One of the neat things we're also doing, working very closely with the superintendents to include them in our interview process when it comes to school counselors.
So is that included in your statistics as the number of clients that you see then, what they see at the school?
Absolutely. We
So
can
the
break it
schools,
down, but yes.
They're reporting to you then?
We report, yeah, we have that because it goes into, so we document, and these are great questions. We chart in our own electronic health record, the county's electronic health record. So I could run a report this afternoon on how many visits we've had in every location we're at, whether it's at one of our pediatrician offices, which we also are at, whether it's at one of the schools, or whether it's at our 2 different sites. We can definitely run a report to that because all is part of our mental health. The nice thing for recruitment reasons is that it also allows a social worker to be part of a clinical team. So they're getting a supervision from our clinic leadership, just like every other counselor or social worker is. They can join that team, but they're also part of the school team.
And they're not part of your FTE?
Yes, they're
They
part of our
are part
FTE.
of your
Absolutely.
FTE.
These are our staff, part of our FTE, but because we can, if we are, the neat thing about the reimbursement, if we do it well, if we do it right, we're viable. So what I'm always saying when I'm looking, when Paul and I are talking, and Carmela and I are talking about, do we need someone new? So like right now, we're interviewing somebody for a school position. What I can tell them is that we'll be working with that school, and that position will be basically funded through billing. So it pays for itself. So our therapists should be able to pay for themselves for the most part.
So the cost to you is managing, it's not that part?
It's managing it, and it's managing to make sure we're getting the clients in the right place. It's a lot, I mean, if you think about the clinic, our Jamestown clinic is very busy. If there's about 22 therapists, it's managing the flow, it's managing the workload, it's managing the no-shows, it's managing the crises. And those things are hard too for therapists, really hard. Schools sometimes are a bit easier. So when I'm out talking with a school superintendent or a principal, and we were out at one of our local ones last week, it's more of talking about how do they fit in your team. So they asked, could this therapist be part of our weekly team where we talk about the high-risk kids? I said, yeah, let's do that. That's okay. So we eat that hour. Of course we should, because it's the right thing for the school. It's the right thing for those children. But then we're also making sure we're seeing enough billables. So it does add up, but that $25,000 to start with that Paul's referencing helps offset some of that. And that's what the state intention, that funding there is funded through Office of Mental Health, those $25,000, because Office of Mental Health really is pushing through the state. Stop hiding out in the clinics and get out to where your clients are.
So your open positions, do they include any school counselors?
Uh-huh, they sure do.
Okay.
They sure do, yes. I'm thrilled to say yes. Absolutely. Thanks for asking that. Did you? I don't know, did that cover it?
Kind of, well, no, in that comment, it's important. Years ago, schools started hiring social workers and because they had a need, and it wasn't getting covered.
You're right.
And so, I think it's important that we continue to build the program to be able to offer that. And hopefully, we can get that change to go back the other direction. Schools will start leaning more on county services versus their own services, seeking their own service. And so the issue with schools seeking their own service, I feel, personally, so they have a social worker. Who's going to oversee and manage that social worker? And who can they fall back on? You have a whole department, and that's what you do,
yes.
Right? And so I think that schools should pay attention to educating children and stay out of the social work. It's just a personal opinion, and so I think it's important that we build our program as best we can so that we can make sure that we can help them do that. So
Thank you.
It's great that you're adding those people, and we'll be able to provide those services because it is important. And that only helps that individual as they get out of the school too and moving forward into our community.
You're right.
It just helps overall, so.
Thank you.
And if we do it well, which I know we will, it will not only create that partnership with the schools, but it'll help out with attendance, it'll help out with their test scores, it'll help out with them becoming academically sustainable. It's one of the cool things that Trish told me this morning before we came over here, is how there are students literally inquiring about, hey, when is our therapist coming back? And that is huge because they're looking forward to their treatment and they're looking forward to being a part of it. So that means that therapist created an impact, whether she knew it or not. And sometimes we don't know because we think we're just in a state of crisis, but it was cool to hear Trish come back and say the students are asking for it.
I have a question. Trish, so as you continue to add schools and you add additional counselors and you talk about the fact that reimbursement will pay for the expense associated, does that expense associated also include the amount of time and expense that is included in the billing and the billable?
Yeah. And again, all great questions. It is just like in the clinic, it's definitely knowing and working closely with Paul, working closely with his billing department over what services are available, what is not, who else do we include. For example, you've heard me come to you folks talking about our mobile crises teams before. And that's another service we'll be starting up, that youth mobile crises, which could go into the school for some things that maybe a counselor can't bill for. But yes, the short answer is yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
The hard answer is making sure we are managing and overseeing it. Okay, but that's our role. Rachel and I do that jointly today administratively. We do that piece. But yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
That administration is tied to essentially our clinics. These people will actually be remote workers but their administrative function all flows through a clinic. And so the billing support is already provided to the clinic, so this just happens to be a worker outside of the regular workplace. And of the 18 positions that are vacant currently, all of them are targeted to be self-supported. So there should be no impact on the county for that. And that is a position that was taken whenever we started this budget, is to see if we couldn't make sure that everybody was paying their own way. We would really like very little additional funding for that. And as you see on the on our mental hygiene programs total down there at the bottom, our local share down $500,000, and that came about. It came about due to estimates, mostly from payroll activities, and then we looked at, once we had established what we thought the total cost was going to be, we looked and see if we could stretch as many income sources as possible. So that's the state and the federal, and whatever the clinics can generate. After we had set that, finance re-estimated or came up with a savings plan estimate for vacations and vacancies and things people would not use, which should drive our cost down. We didn't go back at that point with the ability to modify our income projections, but initially we once again targeted to be self-supporting. So our original target for mental hygiene's program was 0 local share.
We did give an overview about how we applied the vacancy savings at the beginning of this morning, so they heard about that.
So that's where that big number comes from.
Marty? And Paul, first of all, welcome to the county.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to ask you any questions because you've only been here 3 days, but as long as you brought it up.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if I hear you right, the 18 vacancies for 2023, the 18 vacancies projected for 2024, you're saying that all these vacancies are funded either by the federal funds, state funds, or clinic fees?
The primary part here will be clinicians. This is face-to-face clinicians, so they'll be billed through insurance facilities.
Okay. Do you get some state or federal aid
yes,
funding
sir.
for
yes,
some
sir.
of these? Okay.
Like the county's local share, the state and federal do support overall programs.
Okay.
It's hard to identify where specifically that goes, but this in particular should all be clinic driven.
Okay. I was going to wait till you've been with the county for a week before asking you questions.
Tough
but,
ones.
As long as you answered them, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I forgot to make a point earlier, and as I was sitting here, I thought about it. But one thing back into the schools, some of those school employees used to be county employees.
Right.
How far of a relationship can you build? Can you obtain some of those services back? And a lot of times, so the school is actually having to cover those costs. They can't get reimbursed, right? Mm-hmm. So how far of a relationship can we build so we can say, hey, give us half of that person back, because the school can hire half a person too, and say, and then also that helps the county in the sense that it has a person in there now, and we can help cover the cost. That helps our taxpayers.
No, it's a great question. What we've offered to every school, and there, without going into too much details about different conversations, but every district within this county is aware that if they are no longer able to fund that social worker, and we'd like to have an opportunity to interview with them, and we'd be happy to help out with that. Because again, in the school, just the school, there is no way We are not tapped out. We are not capped. And the other piece, though, I want to make sure is clear. This isn't just about county mental hygiene swooping in and rescuing everyone. You never want to be that person. There are 2 other licensed programs and agencies within our county, UPMC, Outpatient Mental Health, and Outpatient Chemical Dependency, as well as the Resource Center has it. Resource Center does have some people in the school too. We always make sure that there's an opportunity for our colleagues within this county. Part of our role as LGU is to make sure that we fill the gaps, not just take over everything, but we fill the gaps. So we work closely with the director at Resource Center. We work closely with the directors at UPMC to say, okay, there's another need. Do you have any interest in this? Would you like to work on this? No, we're kind of capped, we're tapped out. Okay, we'd be glad to help then. We've done that with several schools in North County as far as what the needs are. But you're absolutely right. And if there is, one of our newest therapists we got from the Buffalo area for that very reason, her job was about to end. Because they're not doing that in Buffalo right now. So her job was about to end because she was funded, the position was funded through COVID funds. And oh my, it was about to end. So she applied with us, and she's amazing. Bilingual, we took her out to one of the local schools, had her meet with the administration there. They loved her, and she started last week in that school, and it's working out really well. And we're also trying to match the right person. So in our Dunkirk system, again, preferred language of many of those students is Spanish. Our therapist that's out there actually graduated from Dunkirk. Her son is in the Dunkirk High School, and they just think she's amazing. So that fit, that Chautauqua County fit that we're always looking at, we're not Erie County. We're not Syracuse. We're not Rochester. We're Chautauqua County. So we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of our county the way that our county wants us to. Not that we're shoving things down their throat to do things a certain way. But I'm thrilled to see that you are interested in this, you want us to continue this. It's a huge, I told Rachel when I first joined the county that my hope was that we'd be able to have 85% of the kids we see seen in a school. We're not there yet, but that's my goal. Let's see them where they want to be seen. Let's see them where they're going to show up. Let's see them where the teachers can support them. You know, some of what we can do, when we're out at one of the schools in one of the towns last week, they said, you know what, do you think your counselor could spend a little time watching the classroom? It's more of a special needs classroom. It's like, yeah, absolutely she can. Then the other piece we can do, so that rest of that $25,000 we're getting for some things can be other kinds of services. So we assess with the school, with the principal, with the superintendent, with their on-site staff to see what other needs they are. Are there some educational needs? Do we need to provide, there was some training done in Westfield last year. All students received health training on mental awareness, emotional awareness. So sometimes that's what they need. Sometimes they don't need a counselor, but they need some education, or the staff needs support. So we provide that too. So that's where this funding is going. And that's what we want to keep seeing. So schools are real important to us. You'll probably see me up here a lot over the years saying, hey, we've got some more, we'd like to amend our budget, and we'd like to serve more for our schools. So thank you. And thanks for letting me talk about it.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Okay, the last page is our law program. This is where the 730 hospitalizations are funded. Historically, it looks like about $250,000 is what's been in the initial budget, initial approved budget for each of those years. In 2021, I'm blanking on the total. It was between $500,000 and $600,000 in total cost for hospitalizations. Last year was $880,000. This year we're on target to go slightly over $1 million. And so we're asking for y'all to move that initial funding from $250,000 to $500,000, so that we only have to come back once or twice during the year as those bills accumulate. It is kind of interesting that as a department, we don't actually administer. We don't treat those people specifically. care form, et cetera, but OMH has decided that we're the conduit for the payment of those funds, which is, I know that we have some discussion about that before us. Maybe we shouldn't be the conduit. Maybe we should look to other departments for a part of that. So, but that's not occurred yet. So
Who would do it if it wasn't you?
I don't know. You know, I'm sorry that I don't know very much about 730 process or who does that actually.
It does need to be either a licensed psychiatrist or a licensed psychologist approved to do it. So the first part is that evaluation of an incarcerated individual or someone with charges, if the judge orders it. And then the second part, if two psychiatrists or any combination of licensed psychologists and psychiatrists both deem that they're not competent to stand trial. Remember, that's all we're talking, competent to stand trial. So some of these folks, if you brought them to your local hospital, they would not be admitted. So it's not about emergency psychiatric admission. This is just, can they stand trial? So if two say no, then the judge may order them, remand them to a psychiatric facility to, again, as Carmela indicated, to restore them to the ability to stand trial. That's the only goal. Some of the difference, I know we've talked about this and talked about it and talked about it, was when bail reform came about. The old days is you used to see most of these folks stabilizing in our jail because they were there longer. So the old thing is these costs, instead of Paul saying $1 million, were about 50,000 total. And then the other piece of that is we were only responsible for 50% of it, of the cost if they went to the hospital, like Buffalo Psychiatric Center. We only had 50%. So 50% of that plus jail reform, that's what upped it. So we've done multiple things, and I know you've asked that Carmelo come back, and he's come back and spoken. I've spoken before over the last year about this. We have had meetings with the Office of Mental Health. We are meeting with a couple of the judges within the next week or so to look to see how can we support them better so that they feel more, and maybe we can do some other things to help restore them before needing to go to Buffalo Psych. That would be ideal, to be honest. But some folks may think if they're coming in and they're very psychotic, sometimes just a week on an antipsychotic medication clears them. That's why longer stays at the jail used to, and I'm not pro or against it, but that's one of the differences it used to make, is that they could stabilize, or coming off a substance. Someone coming off meth, give me a few days with them, let them come off of it, and they may be a lot clearer and therefore able to stand trial. But we're having to put them into that so quickly now. And so many of the things are not, like misdemeanors, you're not going to go to jail for. Again, that may be the right thing, but when we're talking about, now we're sending them out of our county, means their families, in order to visit them, is having to go to Buffalo or Rochester, depending on where they're sent, or Elmira. Those are the three primary for adult. And this is what we're doing. They're not around their providers. So it's a tough one. Multiple conversations. And I know, so Carmelo's hitting from one angle, we're hitting from a couple others, and we're working on it.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's yes, it comes to mental hygiene, and it becomes a building that relationship. And after we meet with these judges and really developing a system where if they deem where they are evaluated, where we can state, yeah, we're going to be able to stabilize this person, but in terms of will they ever be able to stand trial and be competent for trial, some of these individuals have been seen for 15, 20 years by the same psychiatrist that's probably going to do the evaluation, and he or she is probably going to be able to say, hey, they're not ever going to be able to be competent to stand trial. So let us try to work with them. Let's see what we can do within the community, within itself. And then it does depend on the crime, as Trish stated. And that's the other piece. And so it does depend on the crime. It does depend what the charges are. So it's just many variables. And I mean, to our best ability, what I think we need to do is really be able to identify early on and be proactive. Are we going to be able to stabilize only or stabilize and restore. And this way we can really try to maximize our resources. One thing Trish always says, we're not a county that lacks resources. We just have to maximize them to our fullest potential, to be quite honest. So we do have a lot of resources here that we can utilize. I was able to call Buffalo Psych for an individual last week, and they said, hey, how about we send out our MIT team and go meet them and see what we can do. And then we were out there, we were able to get out there and help the individual. So it's just really getting super creative and really making a lot of phone calls and catching it early on and just really being present in the now.
So does this cost includes transportation to Buffalo or Elmira or whatever? Or who covers
I think
this?
it's just the bill.
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to recall.
I don't think we've had one come through yet, but I would assume that would go on the facility and then just bill through to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do any of these people have insurance? I know this is a crazy
Yes.
question, but
You
can you?
cannot use it.
so
Yeah,
can
we
you-
can't use it.
You can't use it if it's court ordered?
The
Yep.
difference is, it's penal law versus mental hygiene law.
Okay.
That's the difference. Because we asked that to even the initial exams. For example, sometimes the person's not in jail at the time, they're released, so the examination is done perhaps at one of our clinics. Can't bill for that either. Can't bill for the time it takes for someone to sit with them. So there is no, and right now, so if you ever have an opportunity to speak your mind about what we ought to do in New York State, you may have heard that there is conversation about changing things in the jail, about the ability to use Medicaid, to bill for Medicaid. I know Dr. Falk will probably talk about that too when you speak with him later on. Right now, we can't bill for any services, health or behavioral health in the jail. Pennsylvania can, by the way. So your neighboring state, for the first 30 days, they can bill Medicaid. What that means is so many people clear and so many people released within 30 days, they're able to bill for that. We can't.
Can you send anybody to Pennsylvania?
I know. Okay, now that was clever. Usually they send to us, by the way. I'm not supposed to be doing those things. That was great, though. I like that.
I mentioned the funding source. In the past, it was very easy to identify that the county paid 100% for the 730 care because our local share, both for administration and operations, was a positive number. So it was clear to identify that the county was doing its part. Because we have a negative number now in our operations, our total local share looks different now. And I don't know that that's, I mean, clearly we're gonna have to come back for money because of the increasing costs, almost regardless of what you fund. But I think we need to make sure that those funds are clearly delineated.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, a couple things I took out of that is, this year you already are saying you're trending toward $1 million, and we have 881 already that we've spent. So I'm assuming that you're gonna be coming to us with a resolution that you need more money for this year.
Yes.
Last year, I don't mean it in a negative way, but we heard the same sales pitch about, we hope that we can decrease it, but it hasn't worked. So I'm assuming as long as the numbers are gonna be close, we're still gonna have that same shortfall by a significant amount.
Yeah.
So, those are the numbers, obviously. We're gonna already spend more this year. And even at 500,000,
We're halfway.
halfway.
I have a couple comments. I know this has been a difficult one to decide on the budget in the past. I mean, years ago, we had $30,000 budgeted every year. Sometimes we might spend 10 or 15, and other years maybe 35,000. And since this changes occurred, it's been consistently up well over $500,000 between that and $1 million. Last year, I believe it was discussed to leave it at $250,000 for the 2023 budget. And so we did increase it to the 500 for this year's budget, but certainly still a risk, I would agree.
this,
Yeah, it's half of what it should be. I mean, it's 500,000.
Yes, and that was the case last year during the time of the budget as well, and, you know, so, there has been decisions in the past to keep it at a lower number. I know we hope that it might not be as high, but it has consistently been for a couple of years now, so, I certainly wouldn't recommend it, reducing it from the $500,000, but I wouldn't argue with you if you wanted to increase it if we were able to find some other offset in the budget.
How many of those, you have a secret list over there that we're not privy to yet.
This was not one of the ones on the list, but we certainly anticipated some discussion about it, so.
New York State used to fund 50% of it, correct?
Yes.
And that stopped last. in
April 2021.
21?
21.
Yeah. And we have been consistently way over in 21, 22, and 23.
Yeah, the numbers requested for 730s have, it's not just paying for 100% of it, but the requests.
The requests have gone
through the
up.
court system, our court system has gone up
Double.
dramatically. Oh, I'd say more than double, to be honest, the
Yes.
requests for these. They're also worried too. They're in that position of, what do they do? So that's why meeting with the judges, we're trying to see if we can help in any way. You know, can we talk with the client? Can we do anything differently? Can we agree to work with them in the community? So we'll keep plugging away, but you're right, we did say that, and we're both on calls, and every county is saying that. I have not heard so far any foolproof solutions any county has come up with, to be perfectly honest. We're kind of right in the middle of what others are doing. Some are much higher than ours, some are a little bit lower, but about the same.
And once they go to Buffalo or Rochester or Elmira, they're out of our control. I mean.
They're under their care.
Yeah,
they're
once they go
under their
there.
care and their final
Disposition.
disposition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Discharge date.
Yeah.
If that's what your treatment plan, yes.
That's why the meeting with the judges is important, because at the bare minimum, we want to know and we need to track when they step foot in. So this way we can start counting and doing the countdown and really staying on top of it and saying, hey, patient X has been there 95 days. What's the status? Where are we? And then we could try to piggyback and do what we need to do from the legal perspective. I hate to be annoying that way to them, but I'm okay with it because we got to meet somewhere in the middle. And I don't have a perfect answer, but at the same time, the numbers have increased in terms of just requests. And sometimes they do stay in the jail waiting to be transported as well. I think that's important. So it's not like all right, cool, you're not stable or you're not competent to stand trial. It's not like you leave tomorrow.
It's 3 weeks to 2 months usually, before a bed's ready.
What is the average cost per day? Would you guys have that broke down?
$1,100 a person a day.
A day?
A day.
A day.
It's your typical inpatient rate. Our local hospital, it's $993. So yeah, it's your
And
typical
whenever
rate.
that court order comes through, the judge assigns an up to date. So they may go out as much as a year, and typically they have been. And so there's probably not much incentive for the facility to butt that.
Not at all, I guess, so. I do have another question. This is for Carmelo. You referenced a few different times between stabilize and restore.
Yeah.
What is, I guess, the definition of stabilize to restore? And, what's involved in that?
Well, stabilization, like Trish was stating, so medication, if somebody needs their meds because they're psychotic, and yeah, we'll stabilize them where they can conduct their activities of daily living. However, just because they're stable doesn't mean that they're going to understand and be restored to understand the charges that are they're being faced with in court. That they may never be able to due to intellectual disabilities, maybe being on the spectrum, or just overusage of whatever substances, and their capacity mentally is just not there anymore. And I think that's judges are in a tough spot, so are public defenders, so are district attorneys, where individual comes in and they may ask a question and the answer they may get is completely left field, and they're like, okay, let's try to restore for trial. And the reality is, I guess this is where we need to come in, and we need to have that better continuity and that better relationship where we can say, not restoring this person. And some, not all, they have probably been in our care before, when we can say, this is the diagnosis, this is as far as we could probably get them, and what can we try differently. So it really just, sometimes they come in so fast. If I'm just going to be honest, we get, 24 hours we've gotten at one point. Hey, this person for 7:30. I'm like, wow, hold on. Like, we really need to work together to fill in the gaps. And I guess it just depends on what's happening legally.
Who makes that final decision with the individual?
Judge based on the judge makes a final decision based on the evaluations conducted by the psychiatrist/psychologist. Yes.
Back to we're underfunded, moving forward this year.
Any suggestions? Can we get that secret list?
I want a secret list.
The list of amendments we have right now are balancing for the most part, so to increase this would require us to find another offset in addition to the items that we have listed. I think we have.
Well, and just the only scary thing to tie it in with the safety net number. You know,
Yeah.
there's another unknown. We could have a potential of $1 million shortfall, that we've already discovered, that's all. So at some point in time, you do have to start correcting it. If we are going in and looking at this, we know it's gonna be short.
When we first assessed the situation and put together the requisition that you're gonna be seeing next month, for $500,000, we're already 75,000. Our actual costs are already $75,000 under that, over that, I'm sorry, so. It's a guess, but every time one person gets added, you're talking about $33,000 more dollars a month per person.
Marty, this 500,000 is probably understated by, I would say, at least 250,000. Yeah, roughly. That's the minimum.
I did make a note of this and the discussion you had on the safety net, so if at the end of today's hearing, we want to revisit these two items, that might be an option for you to kind of talk about it at the end of the day, as you hear about from any other departments.
Yeah, Kitty's been real involved with watching the funds and seeing those expenses and where we are located, so she's keeping up with us.
I have a few more budgets I'm here for.
That's all I have.
Anything else? Okay.
We good?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Mel, that's it for now, because we can't ask questions. I guess we break for lunch. Come back at 1 o'clock. Anybody object?
No, not unless the